Stay tuned for our next episode with Amy Matysio. Hey, I'm here on the Reel Talk podcast with my dear friend, Amy Matysio.
Hello.
Hi, Amy. Amy, you've been in the union a long time, right?
I have. I think 2001, I joined ACTRA.
What? As a baby.
As a literal baby.
And that was in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I joined in Regina, Saskatchewan, which is where I'm from. So I was actually a member of Equity, the theatre union first, Canadian Actors Equity Association, and then I moved my way into ACTRA from there.
Amazing. Have you sat on a bargaining team before?
This is my first time being part of a bargaining process at this kind of level. I've consulted in different ways before, either focus groups or other sort of how can I help situations, but this is the first time I've gone through a full wages and working.
Speaking of focus groups, I think that you, as a vice president and like an executive of ACTRA Toronto, you attended, I think all but maybe one of the focus groups that we did. Were there like 10 of them?
I think there was more than 10, but yes, I thought a lot about this in the process of getting ready for bargaining. So I sort of had the privilege and was able to carve out the time to attend pretty much every single focus group that ACTRA Toronto did before we got ready with the proposals. And I think just generally for me as an executive, but me as a member of this union and where I'm at in my own career, I think it was really like I took so much away from where everybody is at and how I could find all the intersections between all the different categories and what we're all feeling right now. It wasn't as though anyone was specifically talking about something that I couldn't relate to. I might not do that job, but I could instantly relate to what they were going through and what they really needed as far as gains in this round of bargaining. But also, I can recognize that having done many of these different jobs over my career, I'm hearing things and going, wow, we really haven't come that far in that conversation. Or, wow, we're still talking about that. Or, now we hear it in a totally different way. And, many of these things have been on the table over and over, and they've either fallen off or we've come so far in a fight for it. And in the end, it just didn't get there. But I also really enjoyed kind of recognizing that I've been a part of many of these conversations for literally almost 25 years.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Did you guys feel through the working wages process like, whoa, we have a new level of responsibility this time around because of how much technology and COVID is that a question you feel like makes sense?
Yes. It's a great question. Yes, I think that the stakes have changed in many of the conversations. So obviously, in AI, since the last round of bargaining, the stakes have completely changed. In fact, the entire what AI looks like, how it even walks and talks, like how it literally walks and talks, like that's something that we have to address in a real way because this is it's not only an existential fight, it's actually on the table right now. We're watching jobs just disappear. Replacement labor is happening using AI. So that's real, and that has to be addressed in a real and meaningful way. It's not something we can just sort of tack up on a board and go like, we'll get to that. We have to do it right now.
Like a feeling of urgency.
Yeah, there's a real urgency. Yeah. There's like a pulse to it. And there's an incredible team of minds. I feel like I'm very proud of where this union is in this conversation. And yes, we can look to our neighbors and what SAG-AFTRA, what they got in their gains, but we have to do it to reflect the Canadian stories and how we make film and television. So I think there's an urgency around that. I think there's an urgency around, obviously, things like audition reform, because the game has completely changed since the beginning of COVID. And COVID still is, but, before the pandemic and how we literally interacted with casting and how we did our job has dramatically shifted. And yes, people will say, we've been doing self-tapes forever. And we absolutely have that. And we have to continue to do them. No one is saying we need to stop doing that. It's just that's not real. Even just from an accessibility point of view, how people access material and are able to get their content out. But how the process of auditions have sort of, I use this word fatigue a lot. How that's settled in to the performer, we have to address that in a real way, because the level of output that is required and sort of the labor that's been downloaded onto us, onto performers, is real, and we have to address that in a sustainability way. Like, I think about sustainability as like a performer able to keep like getting up and doing it, sort of in these silos, right? These self-tape silos, and the amount of material that they have to be able to pump out in a matter of hours, essentially, sometimes, right? Because it depends on when you get it and when the turnaround times are. But so looking at that, I feel like when you use a word like fatigue, we're talking about burnout and just exhaustion, and then how that plays maybe not just for a principal performer, but let's say a background who are sitting on set for like all this amount of time, or stunt performers whose literal job it is to keep everybody safe. We can't be mucking about with feelings of like exhaustion and fatigue without addressing them. And I wonder, like, yeah, we talked a little bit about it as like an accessibility, like there can be a pro and a con there. And so what are the ways, like, what is it? Is it boundaries? Is it fences? Like, how do you describe the way that you imagine us kind of coming together? Because this is a really, like, it's a deeply, widely felt thing. Yeah.
People have strong opinions. They either love a self-tape, they loathe the self-tape. How do we like find, I don't know, a balance? Is that a thing?
I think we need access points that people can see themselves in, right? Like you have to be able to be reflected in the agreement, like it's going to work for you, and it's also going to work for the employer. Right. So we have to come together. We have to sort of meet in the middle in a way that makes sense, because I don't think everyone's always going to agree on anything, on any proposal. Language is not easy to just go, say like, we all agree, check mark. There has to be some give and take. But I think we have to be really conscious about what our members are telling us, because they are the experts of this work. They are doing the labor. And so when you do these focus groups, or even you'll say, the union already knows. They always say, we already know from the phone calls, from the emails, being in the room with people, we hear it. We know what the major issues are. And so now we need to sort of take all that and make it make sense, and have the employer recognize that this is what we need to do in order to move forward in this area. Because otherwise people are going to stop auditioning. I've heard this a lot. A lot of members have sort of hit the wall, and that's not something you want to hear. Yeah, and you want to figure out a way to help them, to give them a way back into this work.
I feel like we've both heard stories of like younger performers who are coming out of theater school, or maybe like drawn to the union without doing that route, and they're saying like, I've never been in person, I've never met a casting director, and I feel like when we were getting started, you really were basing that was how you sensed like, how am I doing? I'm going in the room, and without that feedback, it's a barrier to even just like artistic progress in some ways, which is part of the labor that we provide, right?
Yeah, and I think recognizing that not everybody works the same way is really important. So I might love a feedback. I'm a big feedback girl. I love direction. I love directors. I love casting directors. I like getting in the room and having some type of conversation, because inevitably conversation and that kind of feedback loop is going to change my performance. I am someone personally who needs a little bit of the something, and I need adrenaline to kick my process into that next level. But I say, is that because that's how I have habitually learned to cross the finish line after 20 years of knowing that my body has a process and it knows when it's like time to go? Maybe, but like you say, there might be someone who's never put themselves into that state, so they don't really know what that's like. But might not matter to them. They might be able to just go and they think self-tapes, I'm killing this.
Yeah, on camera,
That's right. And but I also just think of like generationally, like does it work? Are you 75, 80, 85 at home and you need to get something? And what does that look like? Do you have roommates? Do you have Wi-Fi? And all these things we hope that have been addressed as things and times have changed and we need to keep working, but still we have to talk about it in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think none of our members like listening to this are not going to know this, but just that transfer of labor from like a reader or a casting session, like all of that has collapsed down onto us. And there are other kind of industry partners that are feeling it. It reverberates on them, but a collective agreement is a place where we can start to like.
Yeah, I want to have a self-help group for my husband and all the, just shout out to all the readers out there who no longer want to act with their partners in their homes. They never signed up for that. But that's what it's become. And we make a lot of laughs. Everyone's out there making laughs about how the situation is going, but that's real too, right? Like we are also bringing a lot of others into this conversation that never wanted to be there, perhaps. Or like, I have a lot of memories of working with my husband as my reader, as my number one go-to. I want to start a support group for partners or any friends who have been consistently showing up for us as readers. But
oh my God, isn't there a story of you?
My husband, a specific story is what you're looking for. I know the one you're looking for. It's when I told him to turn around because I had to get very emotional and cry. And it's just like great reminder to writers, never write cry here, right? And I usually cross it out. I get my Sharpie and I cross it out. But I knew in this moment I had to cry. And I was really feeling it. And he was bugging me. I love him and he's great to look at, but turn around. I asked him to turn around. And so we cut and he's like, you really want me to turn around? I was like, turn around. And I'm already on the edge because it's very emotional and I don't want to do this again. I like to just get in there, get it done, and get it out the door. And we did it again and we were rolling and I see something light up. And now I'm crying and I'm in the middle of this emotional monologue. But I'm looking at a light that's kind of like down my eye level and I just snap. I think it's like mid-lockdown. I just go right to 11. I don't know what is happening, what's lighting up or what he's doing. And it turns out, of course, this is all on camera and don't ask me for the footage, but I did keep it. He's just checking sports scores. He's now just looking at fantasy hockey or whatever league is of that season. And he's just doing that.
Wow.
And I think the monologue that I performed questioning why he was doing that, I should have just sent that in.
Absolutely.
Because the levels in that, the emotional levels in that were, like, that was a starring role.
Like he didn't know that by turn around you meant and stay present.
I just mean turn around, stay present, let me look at your back, let me
be sad
connect
about that.
with your shoulders. Yeah. Don't let me be fully distracted by you interacting with the internet in real time.
Incredible.
I think everyone has a memory that they will take with them through this time.
We talked about this a little bit. We talked about AI. I wonder, there's a couple kind of directions we could go. I know you have strong feelings both as a parent and also just like a caring human being. We have a lot of minors, a lot of children in the union. Do we want to talk about AI and the risks, not just to adult performers who have all of the capacity to, sign a thing and dot an I and cross a T, but also like the ways that you may be uniquely looking at it around our child performers. And also, do we want to talk about, do you want to go there first? Do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I want everyone to have AI protections. There's control, consent, and compensation. That's one piece of this puzzle. But there's also the unknown piece of the puzzle, and that's what we're going to be walking ourselves into with this round of negotiations. We need to be building fences that have never been built because technology is moving so fast. We don't really know what's on the other side. We don't really know what's coming. We can imagine, people can tell us, we can look to other technology companies who are creating things at a rapid pace that just like terrify me when I see them. But we have to kind of get calm and get steady with it and kind of get into it and then see what we can achieve right now. We can only go so far right now. And we have to figure out what's going to make the biggest difference. And yes, children, my child is 6.5 years old. He's not in this business, but I can only imagine, even putting my child on the internet, I have a lot of fear around. Mm-hmm. So let alone letting my child perform in something and put his voice out there, and the likeness conversation and what happens with replicas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's very terrifying. So
is there a part of you that through this process sees like the hopeful, the optimistic, the possibilities when unions, strong unions, 30,000 members, go in and say, we are going to fight for this, that gives you some like hope for?
Yeah, I do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I would say that for myself, I have a lot of grief I'm sitting with AI as a voice performer. Will I ever do an audiobook again? Commercial voice work, will that just disappear into an AI vortex? Animation, these are all really scary thoughts as someone who's been doing this for, I've said over 2 decades. So yes, there's the practical side of that fear, and that grief, that sadness around jobs being replaced by robots. Like, I'm scared of the robots.
And jobs we love.
And jobs we love, like jobs that are craft jobs that you excel at, that you study, that you invest time, maybe money, home studio, all the things. But also, I do think that I've found myself find hope in the process of working towards bargaining, because the education around what we're going to attempt or what others are already doing, it gives me a little bit of, takes me down a notch. I'm not so like, the robots are coming, because they are coming, and AI is a tool. Alistair always says this, our executive director, a tool to pick up and put down. It's not something to replace the labor. So I really stand into that, and I hope we get somewhere that feels good for the members.
Yeah,
that's my hope, is that people feel hope.
I love that. I think we've talked about this many times over the last number of years around like the changing landscape in Canada around film production, and things are challenging, right? With the strikes, like all the things. But we still have to find a way to make sure that people are compensated for the work they're doing in a way that actually allows them to go and buy groceries or take their kid to camp or find childcare, all the things.
We need to look at all these things. Gains need to be made across our entire agreement. Every category needs a win. Every category needs a gain. We have a lot that we can push into. And yes, inflation tells us a big story about where we are at as performers. The residual model needs to change because everything is changed. Like, how we consume media has changed and is changing. So it has to be reflected in what we do as performers and how we are attached to the model. So I think inflation, residuals, wage increase, this is a sign of the times.
Yeah.
This is what everyone's dealing with. We can look to the previous strikes. We can look to SAG-AFTRA. We can look to the Writers Guild. We can look to why they hit pavement. These were big issues for them. And it tells a story. And they're out there, paving the way, even going way back to the Writers Guild strike in 2008. That's the baby nugget of that. And look where we've come to now. So that's another huge piece of this puzzle and this negotiation.
Yeah, and it's not just it's not just the performers unions or the artistic
That's
unions,
right. It's everyone.
I think the longshoremen, I think that they actually came off strike today, but it was about robots taking jobs from dock workers, right?
Yeah.
We look at what the UAW has been trying to do. There's, the biggest, I think, strike in Canadian history in Quebec last summer, over like 200,000. I should get that number right. But, we're looking at the way that unions are trying to navigate these shared issues, and why should we be different?
And why should we be different? And also, we're navigating the same thing in the real world. So like if avocados are like $8, like what are we doing? What are we doing? And I think about childcare. I mean, there are days if I'm on set, my day might go to pay my childcare. And how do I get ahead? How do we get ahead? Especially when we're participating in these hits, in these wins, right? And I shouldn't have to just lose an entire day rate to pay for childcare, which also my childcare provider, they're dealing with everything in the real world, right? So we all have to fit together. It's like this ecosystem of, obviously the industry is very important to look at what producers are dealing with, and they are dealing with a lot. The contraction is real on every single line on a budget. And I see that. I see my sort of peers in this industry, my comrades, my friends, I'm seeing producers leave at a rapid pace. They can't keep up, and we're trying to keep up. So we are collaborators, but we have to get real about how we come together, how the puzzle fits.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've talked a bit in different areas already about being a parent, being a performer. These things come together. There's also, there's kids on set, but there's a home life and balancing that. And part of what we're trying to figure out here is like how to make sure that performers can have a personal life, a home life, and also work and be their best self and come to work and do what you can do and only you can do. The balancing act.
That act of my career.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to balance everything, to produce the home life as you can sort of think of it like that. And my husband is also in the business. So my husband's a musician and primarily a touring musician. So what does that look like when my husband is on the road and then I'm here and then I need to go to set? So our hours don't look like everyone else's hours. I always think like I'm the nurse of this of this creative workforce. Like I get up at 4 a.m. And I might be gone for 14 or 16 hours and then have to get myself home or whatever, or I'm flying away far and then I'm producing my home life from a distance. And financially, how is that even possible? A lot of the times there's an opportunity when you're on a really privileged contract and you hit something great and you can sort of make it work. But then there's just the everyday journeyman rank and file situation where you are driving yourself to a movie of the week set that might be just outside of the rim, but it might take you an hour and 40 minutes to get there. And then what does that look like as far as compensation and how, balancing it. And the balancing act is actually what settles into sort of the mindset of trying to stay steady and do your job while you have all this stuff going on in the background. And sometimes you're asking yourself, is it even worth it? Right? And that's a hard place. I find that really hard for me to be asking myself, is it even worth it? Because it's all worth it to me. I think one job leads to another job leads to another. I'm very like, yes, and like I've always been that way. I actually began as an improviser when I was actually like a very small, like 12-year-old. And so I have a really buoyant energy around work, but I also can get real with myself. And I want to ask for things at this point in my career. And as a woman, seeing jobs just disappear in front of my eyes and taking a little bit of time away when you have a baby, and then what that looks like when you come back, and breastfeeding on set, like what does that even look like? And I've had some wild experiences doing that.
I was going to say, I feel like that tips into like one of the big themes that comes up in these conversations, which is around respect. And like every performer, every member of this union is going to have a different relationship to what it means to be respected when you're on set and how that intersects with what you just talked about, the balancing act. And yeah, just elaborate on that a bit if you can.
Yeah, I mean, when you have to ask for something, there's always a little bit of something inside that bubbles up. It's, you don't want to be a bother or, whatever it is. And I'm pretty good at pushing against that in my own self, but still I think we need to start talking about respect and mindset around like care. What does care look like on set? And we all have different needs when it comes to care, not just childcare, but we might be caring for a aging parent or caring for siblings or
our own
whatever
bodies.
It is, our own bodies and our mind, and how you are respected by the employer in that conversation is really important. What do you need to get your job done at a specific level with the stakes being so high every day on set? You're never told more. We're running out of time. Walking Amy to set. We're fast. We're moving. And so in order to keep that up and the expectation and to do your job at a level that's going to keep leveling you up in this business, you're just like under the water. Your little feet are just paddling away. And
it's like that. I love that image of the duck in Sopranos. He's like, I think it's Tony. He's like talking about how calm the duck is, but under the water, it's like
you're just freaking out. I've even breastfeeding on set. We talk about that because there are still respect requirements in this contract, in this agreement that we have to make gains in. And even you find yourself in a small room somewhere where there might not be a plug-in and you need to plug in your pump, or one time I said I needed a quiet place to go and there was nowhere for me quiet to go that wasn't really alone. So a PA built me a cardboard box to pump in.
Hello?
Now, I would say respect to him for attempting a little puppy house for me. But what did it feel like for me to get inside a cardboard box and do that while they were doing a turnaround? And again, the clock was ticking. So what I also remember specifically about that job was there was a lot of women and female presenting on set who came to check on me because I could see that they knew, how can this be the only option that we have presented her? And why didn't we think of this before? And even though I had mentioned it, when you talk about care and collective care and the sort of putting it into these conversations way ahead of time rather than in the moment,
so that you can point to something in a collective agreement and say, actually, we bargained for this. This was fought really hard for, and I'm entitled to this when I'm here today. Like, right? It's being able to actually use the collective agreement
the tool.
So that you can have that confidence
stand
into it. Okay, that's a really poignant story. And you said one other thing that I know about you, which is that you come through the improv and the comedy and the sketch world. Is there anything you feel like your comedy pals and performers would want to hear from you about what you're hopeful about? Is there anything in terms of like an improv thing? Is that too specific?
Sadly, no.
Yeah. Do you guys like get into anything around those specialties?
No, we haven't. Comedians or actors in comedy, comedic actors, is that what we're called? They'll show up. We'll show up. We'll go anywhere. We're available. You know my joke. It's like I'm available. But everyone feels that. Everyone's available. And right now, everyone is available. You have performers who were never available, never willing to read a script, never picking up the phone, and they're available. Yeah. So we are all now, like we're really fighting for the same parts and that level of consistency in our work. We're all grasping at it, and it feels sometimes like it's all just like quicksand, right? And so I think any of the gains we make right now, I want it to feel like it affects everyone, that everyone can see themselves in this next IPA. Amazing. And recognize how hard everyone worked to represent all of the members. That's what I want. I want everyone to see themselves in this next round.
I love it. Feel proud to hear you say that. Thanks so much, Amy.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Reel Talk. Please like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on wherever you get your favorite podcast.